Hi, I'm Aeon. This is a video. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to more Geometry Dash. Today, I'm going to be sparking up discussion yet again because I haven't had a discussion video in a long time. And as you can tell by the title, top extreme demons and why they will never be good again. And of course, I'm speaking hyperbole because there are exceptions to that we're going to come back to a little bit later. However, I had a very interesting and very mind-opening discussion about this the other day because someone wanted me to elaborate on my whole why I think neutrals are in the hot machine thing, and it made me think a lot about extreme demons and top extreme demons, especially at large. And today what I want to do is I want to open up the discussion, share my thoughts with you guys, and maybe get some good responses to it. I have a little bit of a bulletin board right in front of me, so I just know my talking points. We're gonna be talking it, we're gonna be discussing it, and hopefully you guys get something positive from it. I really hope so. This is the one thing I'm good at in life. It is talking shit and talking about things that make sense to absolutely no one other than myself. So without further ado, let's hop into why top extreme demons will never be good again, in quotation marks. Now, of course, we have to start off with just explaining the demon list and why I think they are going to be exponentially worse and worse and worse. And essentially, it is the popularity of the top 10, maybe all the way up to the top 25, just encouraging the creation of an exponentially harder stuff. The encouragement of these exponentially harder extreme demons are obviously going to make it so that people want to make harder and harder stuff because, well, there's a clout thing there. The most popular extreme demons are often the most difficult ones. Take Slaughterhouse, take Abyss of Darkness, Acheron. These have gained millions of views simply because of the fact that they are the hardest things now. In the past as well, Bloodbath, millions and millions of views. Bloodlust, millions and millions of views. That's just the circle of Geometry Dash, and especially over the last couple of years, meaning that for people to become the most popular at least these days, you need to create the hardest things. That makes sense. I don't think that's the fault of the demon list, however. I think this is just the fault of the community giving them way too much power and valuing them way too much. A good example of that is just the 360 FPS thing. The demon list was like, we're not going to allow anyone above 360 FPS to be on the demon list. And then the community ran with it and said, yeah, if you do that, you're just gone. Sorry, you're not legitimate, even if they don't play list stuff. So I see that in my Twitch chat occasionally where people are like, oh, I play Geometry Dash, I just started, I'm playing on 500 FPS. Is that too much or too little? And then people are just gonna jump on them and be like, you can't play above 360 FPS, that is illegal, you will be murdered, you know, that kind of stuff. And it's an arbitrary rule created by a list that is completely irrelevant to the game itself at large, which makes no sense. I mean, it makes sense in a sense because, well, the demon list is competitive Geometry Dash. It makes complete sense that people would want to follow the rule. It's like if you don't compete in bodybuilding, then steroids are completely fine, right? No, you get what I mean, right? However, where the power of the demon list, in my opinion, is wrong is that they value way too much the personal anecdotes of the people who beat the extreme demons. And what I mean by this is that even though they try to evaluate whether or not a person was incredibly unlucky or incredibly lucky and don't really value those opinions too much, like for instance, if you fluke something from like 30, they're not going to value your opinion on how hard it is because you're disproportionately going to find it a lot easier or potentially even way harder and be like, I just got super lucky, dude. And the same goes the other way around. If you get incredibly unlucky on something, you're more likely disproportionately going to find it much harder / easier than it really is, right? They try and evaluate regular experiences with. Where this falls flat, however, in my opinion, is that it doesn't really challenge and it doesn't really think much about the gameplay itself as much as it thinks about what makes it the worst possible experience imaginable from zero. These personal anecdotes, they're very important. Personal anecdotes that people have and the extreme demons are placed on are incredibly important because, well, there is no mathematical formula to determine what is the hardest and what is not the hardest demon possible, right? You can't mathematically calculate whether or not Slaughterhouse or Acheron is harder, correct? The experiences of people will always be taken into account. That's just kind of like how it is. A recent example of this, Doggy found Silent Clubstep to be ridiculously harder than Slaughterhouse, easier than Acheron. Therefore, there's a possibility that Silent Clubstep will be raised above Slaughterhouse. Maybe not just now, but it's going to be taken into account. His personal anecdote of it was that because, well, truthfully, Doggy got really screwed over by Silent Clubstep, but he is one of very few people who actually have a reasonable opinion on it because he's one of 3 people who have beaten it. There's Zoink, Hako, now Doggy. Doggy's one of 3 people who have completed the extreme demon. His opinion, gold, right? Now, the reason why I think this is a bad thing personally, and I will get into examples in a little bit, do not worry. However, I'm just gonna explain it, and I'm gonna get into why I think extremes are becoming as bad as they are, and it is because the reason why stuff like Silent Clubstep might see a raise on the demon list is because choke points and insufferable experiences from zero outweigh difficulty. Now, that sounds absolutely absurd, right? That sounds absolutely crazy. However, other than the first like 15% roughly of Silent Clubstep, not a lot of the gameplay is really that hard. It's really difficult. Don't get me wrong. It is super, super, super ultra mega hard. Most people, if not 95% of people, will never be able to do it. However, you gotta think about it for a minute. What makes Silent Clubstep as hard as it is? It's because you have to pass the first 25%, you have to get to the drop, and then pass all the hard stuff afterwards. Silent Clubstep on its own, I would argue, probably not, a majority of it is probably not hard enough for the top 10. However, when you calculate in how insufferable it is to actually play from zero, you get one of the hardest demons in the game, right? Just look at Doggy. You got 3 to 100 2 times. Doing 3% to 100, that's 97% of the entire level twice, that's just stupid, right? Playing from zero is a huge mental barrier when it comes to stuff like that, because actually getting to the drop is ridiculously hard. And you see that with someone like Vision, who's been playing it for a really long time. Doing drop to 100 for Vision is not that hard, but he's been getting to the drop a lot from zero, just not being able to pass it. It's because Silent Clubstep, while probably not intentional, was crafted to be the most insufferable thing from zero imaginable, and that's where the difficulty comes from. However, that also makes it so that if someone just gets a little bit lucky with it, like Zoink, I would argue Zoink got pretty lucky with it, it's just not that hard. The difficulty of the actual gameplay isn't as valuable as how awful it is to play it. I want to preface, before I get into my personal experiences and my personal anecdotes here, that this is not to make people be like, oh yeah, I agree with Aeon, the levels he beat are harder than the other ones. The reason this discussion sparked within the people that I was talking to was because of the fact that I said, and I quote, inherently consistent levels will always be underrated in terms of difficulty because the experience of playing them will always be more fun and enjoyable, therefore not feel as inherently difficult. And I have 2 examples of this. My top 4 hardest demons are Neutra, Hard Machine, Sari Never Clear, and Rust. 2 of them really to play from zero. The other 2, very fun to play from zero. Guess which ones are above the other ones? The ones are above the fun ones on the demon list simply because they're That's really it. The reason why I've been getting into this discussion a lot with people is because I keep getting asked, Aeon, why do you think Neutra is harder than Hard Machine? And I've been thinking a lot about it, and I don't think my opinion has changed, but basically the idea is that I think that Neutra, all the gameplay in Neutra is harder than all the gameplay in Hard Machine. That's how it is. I think the gameplay is inherently more difficult every single click. Yes, even the massive choke points in Hard Machine, I think, don't really outweigh a lot of the super hard shit in Neutra. That being, for instance, the 18% click in Hard Machine, infamous 120 hertz frame per effect. I don't think it's harder than the 10% blue orb in Neutra, right? And that kind of stuff. The thing is, though, is that Neutra is incredibly enjoyable to play. Everyone who's been playing it, all the people who have been beating it, shout out to those guys, by the way, have found it very, very fun and very enjoyable to play. Therefore, it's very easy to just keep playing. It's a super consistent level. It's very enjoyable, and it just doesn't feel like a drag to play. The lack of it feeling like a chore to play makes it inherently an easier experience to pull through with. Hard Machine, on the other hand, very polarizing level. A lot of people find it incredibly overrated, and a lot of people think that it's underrated, right? Or a lot of people think that it's fine where it is. That is entirely based on personal anecdotes, based on their experience. And what I think is the reason for this is because when you think about it, when you think back on the experience that you had with a level, you're going to be like, oh dude, Hard Machine, yeah, that sucked so ass. Got to 30% every attempt, never got anywhere because of Shalom, never got anywhere because of 54, all that stuff, and then you randomly get far, and it's like, yeah, it makes sense, right? Making runs on Hard Machine is super easy, but then beating it, very difficult, just because of the fact that it sucks ball sacks to play from zero. And it makes sense. I 100% get it. However, I think this importance of something being difficult and the importance of the demon list is encouraging, actively creating extreme demons and top extreme demons that are as insufferable to play from zero as humanly possible, simply because of the fact that they will place higher on the list inherently because they're not fun. Where's the issue is? Nothing really. The only issue with it is the fact that people put so much value in the demon list that it just becomes like that, right? It's just, you know, it just irks me in a way, because I want there to be really fun stuff at the very top of the demon list that is fun and enjoyable to play. I've been saying for a while now that the only reason why I'm not doing anything harder than Hard Machine for a while is just because of the fact that everything above it sucks ass. I don't want to play something that is actively insufferable to play, but the problem is, for things to be that difficult, it has to be insufferable to play. The reason why I was able to pull through with Hard Machine as a jump from Rust was because of the fact that the gameplay isn't hard. It is a mental challenge. It is a mental battle to pull through and sit through the bullshit that it throws at you, not that it's genuinely difficult. That's why I found Neutra to be as hard as it was, because my current hardest at the time wasn't difficult. It was just a mental challenge of me just bashing my head against the wall until I got somewhere. With Neutra, it was genuine difficulty that was like actually actually challenging my top skill. Hard Machine didn't feel like it was challenging my top skill. It was just challenging my mental stability, right? And the same goes for Sarah Never Clear versus Rust. I said initially that I didn't want to do Sarah Never Clear as a new hardest because while practicing it, it felt a lot easier than Rust, because Rust has harder gameplay. Sarah Never Clear is just really shit to play from zero. And I'm a person who's guilty of this as well. I am very much guilty of thinking things are harder simply because of the fact that I had this terrible experience with it. Troll level, good example. I thought it was awful. I placed it very high on my personal list of difficulty. Sarah Never Clear, I ended up saying I found harder than Rust, but I also recognize the fact that I think that all of the gameplay in Rust is harder. It's just that Sarah Never Clear is such an insufferable level to play from zero, and it feels kind of luck-based to the point where I found it harder. While I'm encouraging people to think more on the sense of, is it actually harder, or do you just not like it? It is an inherent trait with humans that we are just going to find it more difficult to do things that we don't enjoy. If you enjoy something, you're going to have a lot of fun with it. You're going to just breeze through it, and it's going to be a great time. That's just kind of like how it is. The less you like something, the harder it's going to be. That's just how it is. And of course, this just leads to a never-ending cycle of getting the demonless clout, so things are just going to become inherently worse and worse and worse. Naturally, there are clear outliers to this. Kyouki has been very popular. Kyouki is a demon that has been pushed out as like great, and for the top demon standards, I agree, it is great. Edge of Destiny as well seems to be another outlier where it's very, very good for top 25, and it's not just inherently but then again, it also has a really hard burst 25%. So I don't know. We're gonna have to let that one brew for a little bit. And I think this is also a very big part of the reason why stuff like SPL keeps rising up the demon list, because SPL is so heavily carried by really bad choke points and the memory aspect, but the memory aspect is not that huge, that it just keeps rising and rising and rising because it is so insufferable to play. What do you guys think? Tell me what you guys, if this was eye-opening in any way. I might have just been blabbing them on about stuff that makes no sense whatsoever, but I hope I came with anything reasonable. Again, I do want to preface this is not to make people think that Nutra and Rust should rise on the demon list. I don't care. I'm not getting list points out of it anyway. For me, it doesn't really matter. However, I do want to know what you guys think, and tell me if you guys think that there is hope for the top extreme demons. I'll see you guys around. Take care, everyone. Love you all, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out. Thanks for making my day better. Hope my day is a little bit better too.